Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and a report yesterday suggests that the Conservative whips are on a bit of an alert for defections to the Lib Dems. So why is there a great risk of defection to the Liberal Democrats when many, you might think, would move to Reform UK? But first, for daily news and politics, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So according to a report in Politico, the Liberal Democrats have said they've been in talks with several Conservative MPs about defecting. Now, this could just be a ruse on the part of the Lib Dems, of course, reminiscent of when Reform UK claimed they were in talks with actually quite a lot of Tory MPs last year about defecting, and all they got was Lee Anderson, and he'd already been booted out of the parliamentary party anyway. So is this just a Lib Dem tactic to put the idea in people's heads and maybe make themselves a bit more newsworthy? Possibly, but it does actually make sense. A lot of people might think that the Tories' major defection risk is to Reform UK, but at this point in time, no, there will genuinely be a much greater risk of a flight to the Lib Dems. Let me explain why. First of all, political ideology. The Conservative Party, like most major parties, is what we often call a broad church. It attracts people with quite different political views around a common theme, causes quite a bit of friction at times. That theme for the Conservatives used to be free market economics, with more of a mix of positions on social issues, say, even though the party has tended towards social conservatism rather than liberalism. However, the party now has almost no liberal policies, and actually they've made the environment for espousing liberal policies quite unpleasant. You know, I've talked a bit about Labour's lurch to socially regressive policies of late, but the Conservatives have been burning them all down. The only policies which survived the Brexit years, which would appeal to the more moderate Tories, were a commitment to climate action and support for the European Convention on Human Rights. However, Kemi Badenoch is increasingly moving the party towards being climate sceptics, and there's no major pushback against this from the wider party. Now, you take Labour's proposed cuts to disability payments, for example. Major pushback against this from members, unions and MPs because it's out of kilter with the wider party. Badenoch is pushing climate conspiracies and there's very little pushback. James Cleverly is attempting a fight back, to be fair to him, which I may discuss at some point, but I'm not sensing any wider fight against the moves in the party. So although the party still claims to be in favour of net zero, albeit not in favour of moves to achieve it, it may only be a matter of time before that's gone completely. As for commitment to the European Convention on Human Rights, now Kemi Badenoch was a firm supporter when she became Conservative leader. Now she's shifting her position on the issue. This suggests there is a lot of pressure from her party to do so. I'm of the opinion that Brexit has already permanently changed the nature of the Conservative Party and made it a suitable host for a Reform UK infection, or merger as they're more commonly known in politics. If the Tories become officially anti-net zero and anti-ECHR, then the only philosophical difference between the Tories and Reform UK will be on Farage's claims that he would privatise water and gas and boost benefit payments. But as nobody really believes he would, for all practical purposes, there would be nothing stopping the Conservatives and Reform merging at that point. So for Conservative MPs being forced to re-evaluate what their party is for, I can absolutely see some looking at the Lib Dems as a better fit for them. Then there's the more practical considerations, maybe even a more mercantile view. Most MPs like being MPs, I think. It's a nice little earner, especially if you're otherwise unemployable. Very nice pension, subsidised swanky meals in the restaurant, get to make lots of useful contacts for later on if you're into that sort of thing. Just don't get caught looking up tractor porn on your phone. There will be some Conservative MPs who will be looking ahead towards the next general election, and two considerations may pop into their heads. First, if the Conservative Party moves closer to Reform UK, and they're quite liberal, they're going to be seen as a visible outlier and may not be selected as the candidate for the party. In other words, they may well be ousted before the next election, especially if the Tories and Reform do any sort of deal, even if it's not a merger, any sort of deal to stand aside for compatible candidates. Second, if the Conservatives abandon policies like support for human rights, climate action and so on, then some of the sort of Middle England village fete Conservative areas may find the Lib Dems more palatable at the next election. And with Reform UK hiving off more Tory votes, some Tory MPs right now might actually stand a better chance of retaining their seat as a Lib Dem at the next election. And to be selected as the Lib Dem candidate, you don't want to be defecting too late. Do it early, while you can claim it's an act of principle, before you have to start publicly backing policies which would put Liberal voters off, and with enough time to bond with the local party members and activists and the local community. Whereas Reform UK will continue to have trouble getting even vaguely sane candidates for the general election next time, they will absolutely snap up defections late in the day and make them their candidates. So any Conservatives thinking of switching to Reform UK, I think they have the luxury of waiting longer to see which way the wind blows. I mean, they don't want to jump now only to find Reform UK crashes in the polls like the SDP Liberal Alliance in the early 80s. For reference, there were 20 seats which the Conservatives won, so there's 20 Conservative MPs, where their Liberal Democrat rival came second. That compares to only 9 seats, 9 Conservative MPs, where their closest rival was Reform UK. So I can certainly believe that if any Tory MPs defect to anyone this year, say, probably is more likely to be to the Lib Dems. I mean, most of the money is on Suella Braverman being the first to defect to Reform UK, but she is taking her time. Of course, if there were to be defections, that would shift the balance of power further within the Conservative Party towards being Reform UK aligned. Their leader is already following Farage's lead like a blind donkey. Reform talks about grooming gangs. Next day, Badenoch's talking about grooming gangs. Reform attacks the Chagas Islands deal, which her party initiated, and then she's attacking it. Reform talk about banning burqas. Badenoch claims, I've already banned them in my surgeries. You know, want to know what Kemi Badenoch's going to talk about on any given day? Just listen to what Nigel Farage was saying the day before. Because she apparently thinks that the best way to get voters back from Reform UK is to claim that Nigel Farage is right about all the big issues, right? But that's Badenoch being an idiot. It doesn't mean the rest of her party is behind her, despite the public show of loyalty. But if MPs did defect to the Lib Dems, that would weaken what is already a very tame, liberal, conservative bulwark against Farage-level extremism from the Tories. It might actually be a self-fulfilling prophecy. In seeing that the Tories may end up being like Reform UK in every way, Tory MPs may defect to the Lib Dems. That then weakens the moderate wing and makes the outcome more likely. I did wonder after the election if the moderate Tories might fight back. I could sort of understand their reticence to do so during the Brexit years. You know, they were worried about rocking the boat, losing the election to infighting, you divided parties don't win elections type of thing. So they just kept yielding to the political vandals in the hope they could ride it out. But once they've lost that election, once they're in opposition, especially with the beating they got, I would have thought that is the time to fight back. Because if it makes the party look divided and chaotic for a few years, but you come out the other side stronger, that would be worth it. But instead, they've carried on being quiet. Shut up, don't rock the boat. And the party has ended up looking ridiculous anyway. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even become a member for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.